The history of the world is built on a lie so big and so comforting that we have built everything we know about human civilization on top of it. We are told that the Anunnaki, the ones who came down from the sky to the earth, arrived here 450,000 years ago as explorers. We are told they were powerful, arrogant gods who came to mine gold to fix the air of their home planet, Nibiru. We are told they made us as workers because they were tired of doing the hard labor themselves. This is the story Zechariah Sitchin told us. This is the story the Sumerian tablets seem to say on the surface. But it is a cover story. It is a made-up story designed to hide a terrifying truth. New assisted translations of the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation story, have opened up a layer of the text that scholars have ignored for hundreds of years. The text is not just a story about how the solar system was made. It is a war record. It is a black box recording of a killing that happened across the whole galaxy. The Anunnaki did not come to Earth as kings. They came as people running away. They did not come to mine. They came to hide. They are the survivors of a space war that they lost. And the gold they are so obsessed with is not for decoration and not just for the air. It is for shielding. They are building a protective shield around this planet to hide themselves from the thing that hunted them down. The Babylonians call this enemy Tiamat. Historians tell us Tiamat was a dragon of chaos or a water monster. They tell us it stands for the early ocean. But look at how the text described Tiamat. She is described as having 11 helpers. She owns the Tablet of Destinies. She commands Kingu, her general. She attacks with terrible weapons that shoot out a net of energy. This is not a living monster. This is a powerful technology. Tiamat was not a dragon. Tiamat was a giant spaceship, or maybe a level 3 civilization that eats entire solar systems. The text describes the space battle that happened before the Anunnaki came here. It says that Nibiru, the home of the Anunnaki, was knocked out of its path. It was tracked. The third force, the thing we call Tiamat, entered the solar system not to randomly crash into planets, but with a specific target. It was hunting the Anunnaki homeworld. The description of the battle is chillingly accurate. It talks about the 4 winds used by Marduk, the Anunnaki leader, to trap Tiamat. In science terms, winds often mean gravitation waves or directed energy weapons. The text says Marduk released an arrow that tore open her belly, cut through her insides, and split her heart. This describes a planet-destroying weapon, a weapon so powerful it broke apart something the size of a planet. But the win came at a great cost. The explosion was so massive that it shattered the belt of the solar system. Look at the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Astronomers call it the hammered bracelet. They say it is a planet that never finished forming, but the debris in that area contains processed metals. It contains tiny diamonds that only form under nuclear level pressure. It is not an unborn planet. It is a graveyard. It is the wreckage left behind from the space war. The Anunnaki survived, but their home was damaged. Their location was exposed. They realized that the third force was not just one single ship. It was a swarm. And even though they destroyed Tiamat the Scout, the signal had already been sent. The rest of the swarm was on its way. This explains the panic. This explains the sudden, desperate arrival on Earth. They didn't choose Earth because it was full of resources. They chose Earth because it was invisible. Earth sits in the Goldilocks zone. But more importantly, it is protected by a huge magnetic field and is located on the spiral arm of the galaxy, far from the center. It is a backwater, a perfect hiding place. When the Anunnaki landed, they didn't build tall towers. They built underground, the ABZU, the deep underground tunnels in Africa and Antarctica. Why would gods live in caves? Because they was afraid of the sky. They were scanning the signals. They were terrified that the Kingu, the angry leftover forces of the third faction, would track their energy trail. This changes everything we know about how humans were created. We were not made just to dig gold. We were made to keep the disguise going. The noise of humanity, the living mass, the civilization. We are the cover. We are the interference signal made to confuse the senses of the hunter. We are the heat shield. Enlil's obsession with controlling the population, his fear of our noise, was not about sound. It was about our mind signal. If we got too loud, if we became too advanced, we might alert the hunter. We might give away the location of the hiding place. And now look at the sky today. Look at the strange behavior of the sun. Look at the growing number of objects from outside our solar system, like Oumuamua, entering our system. The official story says Oumuamua was a rock, but it sped up. It changed direction. It scanned us. Was it a probe? Was it the third force finally picking up the scent of the refugees hiding on the third planet from the sun?
The Anunnaki are still here. They never left.
They're hiding in a secret civilization deep underground and under the ice of Antarctica. They are shaking because they know what destroyed Tiamat, and they know that the quiet period is over. The hunter has found the prey, and we are standing right in the middle of the fight. This is not a story from ancient history.
This is a warning that contact is coming soon. The third force does not want gold.
It does not want slaves. It works on a kind of physics we cannot understand. It feeds on consciousness. It collects entire
systems. And the Anunnaki are getting ready to do the only thing they can do. Sacrifice the shield to save the hiding place.
They are preparing to sacrifice us. We have already shown that the Anunnaki did not come here to rule. They came here to hide. But when you are being hunted by a level 3 civilization that can eat stars, finding a hole in the ground is not enough.
You need walls. You need a border. You need an early warning system. Modern astronomy tells us that our solar system is
surrounded by a huge round shell of icy space debris called the Oort cloud.
They tell us it is the leftover material from when the sun was formed. But the shape is wrong.
Nature makes disks like the rings around Saturn.
Nature does not make perfect hollow spheres around a single star unless that sphere was built on purpose.
The Babylonian creation text, the Enuma Elish, describes exactly
what Marduk did after he destroyed Tiamat. It says he built a roof over the deep.
It says he placed guards at the gates and set up watch stations to look for the return of the chaotic force.
This is not poetry. This is military building. The
Oort cloud is not a cloud. It is a hiding net. It is a frozen shell of debris built to scatter the heat signal of our sun, to make our entire solar system look like dead, empty space to any scanner looking from outside.
Inside this shell, there is a second line of defense, the Kuiper Belt. Astronomers are confused by the Kuiper Belt because the objects inside it do not move randomly. They move in a pattern.
They group together as if being guided by a massive invisible gravity source. We call this source Planet 9. We think it is a ghost planet.
But the Sumerian texts call it the Nibiru Station. It is not a planet. It is a guard post.
The third force, the thing that shattered the Anunnaki home world, works on a frequency we cannot understand.
To stop them, the Anunnaki had to build a fence made of frozen time. The objects in the Kuiper Belt are not just rocks.
They are sleeping automatic drones left behind by the refugee fleet.
They are the back guard.
They are waiting for a specific signal. If the third force breaks through the Oort cloud, the Kuiper Belt is programmed to turn on. It is a final backup
protection system wrapped around the solar system. This explains the Voyager mystery. When the Voyager probes crossed the edge of the solar system and entered interstellar space, they started sending back data that went against the laws of physics.
They hit a wall of plasma fire.
They hit a magnetic highway that should not be there. NASA says it is just pressure from the space between the stars.
The Babylonian explanation is far more terrifying.
Voyager didn't hit a pressure wave. It hit the force field. It triggered the alarm. And the moment Voyager pierced that veil, a signal went out.
We basically lit a flare in a dark forest.
We told the hunter exactly where we are. This is why the
Anunnaki panicked.
This is why UFO activity shot up after the Voyager crossing. The gods hiding in the bunkers of Antarctica realized that the creatures they made had just unlocked the front door. The camouflage is failing.
The roof that Marduk built is leaking. But there is a darker secret in the text about this barrier. It wasn't just built to keep the hunter out.
It was built to keep us in.
The third force hunts living consciousness. It feeds on the energy of developing civilizations.
By surrounding Earth with this barrier, the Anunnaki didn't just hide themselves.
They turned Earth into a signal-blocking box for souls. We are not just in a bunker. We are in a box that blocks all signals.
This is why we feel so alone in the universe. This is why we don't hear radio signals from other civilizations. The Fermi paradox is not a paradox.
It is a quarantine.
The Anunnaki block the frequencies.
They cut the phone lines because if we were allowed to broadcast our location, if
we were allowed to scream into the emptiness, the hunter would hear us.
Enlil's gold comes back into play here. We pump tons of gold into the atmosphere supposedly for climate engineering, but gold is the best reflector of radiation there is.
Are we fixing the ozone layer? Or are we recoating the stealth paint on the outside of the ship? Are we desperately trying to patch the holes in the disguise before the third force arrives? The genetic mistake is that we are curious. We built rockets. We sent probes. We poked holes in the very wall that was keeping us safe from extinction. And now the sensors in the Kuiper Belt are lighting up. Something big has entered the system.
Something that ignores the gravity of the sun.
The Anunnaki are getting ready
to abandon ship, but we are stuck here. The Babylonian texts call the enemy the king.
The ones who own the tablet of destinies. They are the true owners of this part of space. The Anunnaki are just squatters, and the landlords are coming to kick the tenants out. We've already shown that the Earth is a bunker and the solar system is a minefield.
But every bunker needs a way out.
Every refugee fleet needs a lifeboat, and ours is hanging right above our heads.
For centuries, astronomers have stared at the moon and scratched their heads.
It is a mathematical impossibility.
It is way too big to be a natural satellite of a planet this size. It is locked in a perfectly matched orbit that keeps one side
forever hidden from us.
It is exactly 400 times smaller than the sun and exactly 400 times closer, creating a perfect solar eclipse, a coincidence that exists nowhere else in the known universe.
The standard explanation says the moon formed when a Mars-sized object hit the Earth. But the chemical makeup of moon rocks is wrong. The density is wrong.
The moon is lighter than it should be. In 1969, NASA crashed a lunar module into the surface to test their earthquake sensors.
The moon didn't thud, it rang.
It vibrated like a giant gong for over an hour.
This data scared the scientists. A solid ball of rock does not ring, only a hollow sphere made of metal rings.
The Babylonian texts give the answer that NASA refuses
to accept.
The moon is not a natural object.
It is a built structure.
It is the boat of heaven described in the Epic of Gilgamesh.
But it is not a boat for sailing water.
It is a boat for sailing the stars.
When the Anunnaki fled their destroyed home world, chased by the third force, they didn't come in small ships.
They came in a world ship. They brought their dying atmosphere, their collection of DNA, and their technology inside a hollowed-out
planetoid.
The ancient Zulu legends of Africa confirm this with chilling detail.
The shaman Credo Mutwa told the story of how the moon was brought here by two brothers, Wayne and Panku, leaders of the Shitori, the reptilian Anunnaki. The legend says they stole the moon from a great fire dragon, Shamat, and rolled it across
the sky to the earth. Before the moon arrived, the earth was covered in mist and the seasons were gentle.
The arrival of the massive gravitational engine of the moon caused the Great Flood. It tilted the Earth's axis. It created the seasons. It broke the natural balance of the planet. Park the ship. Why park it?
Why not land?
Because the moon is the go-back. The Anunnaki live underground in the ABZU on Earth for protection, but they keep the moon in orbit as their escape pod. If the sensors in the Kuiper Belt detect the arrival of the third force, the Anunnaki will not fight. They are refugees, not warriors.
They will abandon the Earth.
They will board the boat of heaven and leave. This explains the lunar lights, the strange lights and gases that astronomers have seen on the moon for centuries. These are not volcanoes.
The moon is geologically dead.
These are engine tests. They are keeping the core reactor warm.
They are releasing the exhaust.
And here is the darkest part of the moon story. We are not invited. The genetic mistake. Humanity was created to maintain the Earth bunker, to dig the gold for the shields, and to serve as the disguise. But we are too heavy to take with them. We are biological cargo that will be thrown away when the alarm goes off. The moon is a hollow ark, yes, but it was built for the masters, not the slaves.
When you look at the craters on the moon, notice how shallow they are.
Even massive asteroid hits do not go deep.
They splash on the surface like they hit a metal shell covered in armor. It is a titanium shell covered in dust to look like a rock. It is the ultimate disguise, a spaceship hiding in plain sight.
The Anunnaki know that the third force hunts by detecting high-energy civilizations. This is why they keep us at a low level. This is why they destroy us every time we get too advanced. The Flood, Babel, Sodom. If we develop free energy, if we become a level 1 civilization, we light up the map.
We put the safe house in danger. So they use the moon to lower our frequency. They use it to broadcast a signal that keeps us in a lower state of mind. The moon is not our friend. It is the engine of our control, and it is the vehicle of their
escape.
If you see the moon start to move, if you see it break out of its orbit, it means the hunter has arrived, and we have been left behind to deal with what comes next. We have looked at the Earth, the moon, and the outer edges of our solar
system.
But to understand the true size of the threat that chased the Anunnaki here, we must look at our neighbor Mars.
Today, we see Mars as an empty red wasteland, a dead rock floating in silence. But the Babylonian texts tell a different story. They call Mars Lamu. In the ancient order, Lamu was not a grave. It was a working station. It was a busy outpost. And most importantly, It was the first attempt at a bunker.
When the Anunnaki refugees first arrived in this solar system, running from the third force, they did not go straight to Earth. Earth was wild, covered in water, and full of unstable life.
Mars was easier. It had a thinner atmosphere, lower gravity,
and huge underground cave systems made by old lava tubes.
It was the perfect place to set up a temporary base while they scanned the area for the hunter. The text described the Igigi, the working-class astronauts being stationed on Lamu. They
built the first structures. They carved the first monuments.
The Cydonia region with its famous face and pyramid structures is not a trick of light and shadow.
It is the ruin of the first city.
The shape of the Cydonia pyramids line up perfectly with the pyramids later built in Egypt.
It is the same architectural
style, the same builders. So what happened to Lamu? Why is it dead? Mainstream science tells us that Mars slowly lost its atmosphere over millions of years because of solar wind.
But recently, a physicist named Dr. John Brandenburg released a study that shook the scientific community.
He looked at the air data from the Viking and Curiosity rovers.
He found high amounts of xenon-129.
Xenon-129 is a very specific type of isotope. In nature, it is very rare. On Earth, we only find high amounts of it in one place, the sites of nuclear test explosions.
It is the fingerprint of a massive energy
weapon being fired. The data suggests that Mars did not die from old age. It was murdered.
The Babylonian story fits the data perfectly.
The Anunnaki tried to hide on Mars.
They thought they were safe, but they made a mistake.
They underestimated the senses of the third force. Mars does not have a strong magnetic field. It has no natural shield.
When the hunter scouts entered the solar system, Mars lit up like a beacon.
The third force detected the heat signal of the Anunnaki base. They didn't invade. They didn't send troops. They simply fired a kinetic or directed energy weapon from deep in space. The impact ripped the atmosphere from the planet in an instant.
The oceans boiled away.
The surface was
sterilized.
The cities of Cydonia was buried under miles of red dust. The survivors on the surface were instantly silenced. Only those deep underground or those who had already moved to the backup base on Earth survived. The destruction of Mars was the final warning. The Anunnaki realized that hiding on the surface of a planet was suicide. They needed a planet with a powerful magnetic shield, Earth, and they needed to go deep. This is why the Anunnaki moved to Earth and immediately started digging the ABZU.
They weren't just mining for resources. They were building a shelter from the blast. They realized that the only way to survive the third force was to put miles of rock and water between them and the sky. The tragedy of Mars is the reason why humanity was created in such a hurry. The Anunnaki lost their main workforce, the Igigi on Mars.
They were desperate. They were exposed. They needed a new workforce to build Earth's defenses right away.
We were created to replace the crew that died on the Red Planet. And now, as we send our own rovers to Mars, as Elon Musk talks about building a colony there, we are unknowingly going back to the scene of the crime.
We are digging up the ruins of our master's first failure. And the question still stands. If we turn the lights back on in Cydonia, will the hunter see us again?
The red dust of Mars is
not just rust.
It is the oxidized remains of a civilization that thought it could outrun the unstoppable.
And it stands as a silent monument to the power of the enemy that is still waiting at the edge of our solar system. The official history translated from the Atrahasis epic tells us that the Igigi, the younger generation of Anunnaki astronauts,
rebelled because the work was too hard.
For nearly 3,000 years, they worked in the ABZU.
They dug the canals. They mined the resources. And eventually, they had enough. They burned their tools. They surrounded the house of Enlil, the commander, and demanded relief. Every single one of us has declared war, they shouted.
The load is too much.
It is killing us. But look closer at the situation.
These were beings capable of traveling
between stars.
They had advanced robots. They could manipulate gravity. Why would a level to civilization need to dig ditches with
hand tools?
Why would they be worn out by physical labor? The load was not physical weight. The load was mental terror. The Igigi were the surface crew, while the ruling class, the Anunnaki, hid in the deep shielded bunkers of the underground.
ABZU, the Igigi were forced to work out in the open.
They were exposed to the sky. They knew about the third force. They knew about the destruction of Mars, Lamu. They knew that at any moment, the hunter's sensors could sweep the Earth and they would be the first to be vaporized. The rebellion wasn't a work strike. It was a rebellion born of fear.
The Igigi refused to be the bait. They refused to be the decoy.
They told Enlil, if you want to hide in the bunker, fine.
but we are not going to stand out here and wave at the enemy.
They demanded to be let underground. They demanded safety. This created a crisis for the Anunnaki leadership.
They couldn't force the Igigi back to the surface.
A civil war would destroy the colony, but they couldn't stop the operation either. They needed the resources to maintain the shields.
And more importantly, they needed a living signal on the surface to cover their own presence underground.
They needed a population that looked primitive, loud, and messy enough to confuse the senses of the third force. This is where Enki came
up with the solution, the Lulu Amalu, the primitive worker. Us.
Enki said, "Let us create a creature that can carry the load. Let him carry the work of the gods. We were designed to replace the Igigi on the surface. We were designed to be the new surface crew."
We were given just enough intelligence to follow orders, build cities, and farm the land, but not enough to understand why we were doing it.
We were placed in the Eden, the open plains. We were told to multiply. We were told to fill the earth.
Why? Because a large and noisy population of primitive living beings creates a huge interference signal.
To a scanning probe from the third force, Earth just looks like a planet full of developing animals. The clear, high-energy signal of the Anunnaki is hidden beneath the noise of 7 billion humans.
We are the cover. We are the radar jammer. We are the human shield.
The Igigi were allowed to retire. Some went back to the ships in orbit, the Watchers, and some went deep underground. But we
were left out in the cold.
We build our cities on the surface completely unaware that the real civilization is miles beneath our feet.
We look up at the sky and wonder if we are alone.
We don't realize that we are the only ones foolish enough to stand in the window. The genetic mistake is that we think the surface of the earth is the prize.
We fight was over land. We draw borders.
But the landlords don't care about the surface.
They know the surface is the kill zone. They are happy to let us have it as long as we keep making noise, keep generating heat, and keep the hunter distracted.
This redefines our entire history. The rise of civilization, the Industrial Revolution, the population explosion. It wasn't progress. It was camouflage expansion. The more of us there are, the safer they are.
We are the sandbags stacked around.
The bunker.
And if the attack ever comes, the sandbags are the first to go. For thousands of years, humanity has told the story of the Great Flood. Every culture, from the Maya to the Chinese, from the Sumerians to the Hebrews, remembers the day the water rose and swallowed the world. We are taught that this was a moral event. We are told that the gods were angry because humans were wicked, or sinful, or simply too loud.
But in the context of the cosmic war, morality doesn't matter. The Anunnaki do not care about human sin. They care about survival. The flood was not a punishment.
It was a battle move. It was an emergency plan started to prevent the total destruction
of the solar system by the third force.
To understand why the flood was necessary, we must look at the state of the earth right before the disaster.
The human population had exploded.
The Lulu, the worker race, had multiplied beyond the control of the masters.
But it wasn't just the physical numbers that worried Enlil, the commander. It was the signal. As we explained in the earlier chapters, the Earth is a disguised bunker. The Anunnaki are hiding here from a level 3 civilization that hunts by detecting high-energy signals and organized consciousness. The human race, with its merged chromosomes and sleeping psychic potential, was starting to wake up. We were
developing a shared consciousness.
The noise of mankind, described in the Atrahasis epic as Rigmu, was not the volume of sound.
It was a telepathic roar.
It was a beacon.
Imagine a submarine trying to move quietly through enemy waters.
The captain orders complete silence, but suddenly the cargo in the hold starts screaming. That is what humanity became. We were the cargo that was giving away the location of the ship.
The Babylonian texts describe a terrifying event that came. Before the flood, they talk about the approach of the destroyer.
Astronomers of the ancient world tracked a new space object entering the inner solar system. We call it Nibiru, but in this situation, Nibiru acted as a trigger.
Its massive gravitational pull was knocking the orbits of the other planets off track.
But more importantly, the third force, the hunter, was following Nibiru's path. The enemy. Scouts were getting closer.
Enlil gathered the council of the gods in the city of Shurupak.
The mood was panic. The text says, the Anunnaki were sitting in thirst and hunger. They were shaking. Why would gods shake?
Because they saw the sensors of the third force lighting up at the edge of the Kuiper belt. They realized that the human signal was too
strong. If they didn't silence the Earth right away, the hunter would target the planet and vaporize it, just like they did to Mars. Enlil proposed the Galactic Silence Protocol. He argued that the only way to save the Anunnaki colony was to eliminate the source of the noise. They had to wipe the surface clean.
They had to reset the biological signal of the planet to zero.
This would make the Earth look dead to the scanning probes of the enemy. The decision was made. They would use the gravitational pull of the passing space body to trigger a shift in the tectonic plates.
They would allow the ice sheets of Antarctica to slide into the ocean.
The resulting wave would wash across the continents.
It would be a global hard reset.
But there was a problem. The Anunnaki themselves had to evacuate.
They could not be on the surface when the water hit.
They retreated to their skyboats, the orbital platforms, and the moon arc.
And here is where the oath of silence comes in.
Enlil commanded that no Anunnaki could warn a human. Let the seed of mankind die, he said. Let the signal be silenced. Enki, the chief scientist, was horrified. Not because he loved us, but because we were his data.
We were his library.
If the flood wiped out humanity, the genetic codes, the
hybrid experiments, and the workforce would all be gone forever.
The Anunnaki would be safe, but they would be left with nothing.
They would have no one to mine the gold for the shields. They would have no human shield to hide behind once the danger passed. So, Enki came up with a plan to save a backup.
He contacted Ziusudra, the Sumerian knower, a man who carried a high percentage of Anunnaki DNA.
He could not speak to him directly because of the oath, so he spoke to the wall of Ziudra's reed hut. He whispered the plans for a survival vessel. The Bible describes a wooden boat.
The Sumerian tablets describe a mega boat. The translation of the technical details reveals it was not a boat at all. It was an underwater vessel. It was roofed over like the ABZU. It was sealed with bitumen, which is a kind of tar, inside and out. It had no windows.
It was a biological capsule designed to tumble in the wild currents of a global tsunami without breaking apart.
And the cargo was not of every animal. That is physically impossible. The text says he was told to take the seed of life of all living things.
The seed, the DNA. The Ark was a floating bank of frozen life.
Ziusudra was the librarian trusted with the hard drives of Earth's biodiversity. When the flood finally arrived, it was not a rainstorm. The texts describe the fountains of the deep bursting open.
The tectonic plates cracked.
The Antarctic ice shelf collapsed into the Southern Ocean, creating a supersonic wall of water miles high.
The air pressure dropped so low that blood boiled.
The wind of the south screamed like a demon. From their position in orbit, the Anunnaki watched the destruction.
And this is the most eye-opening part of the ancient text.
It says, the gods were frightened by the flood, and they retreated, climbing up to the heaven of Anu. The gods were crouching like dogs, hiding by the wall. Think about that image. Gods hiding like dogs. They were not watching a punishment they
had handed down.
They were hiding. They were terrified that the third force would see the disaster and come to investigate. They were praying that the water would do its job, that it would silence the human broadcast before the hunter arrived.
The mother goddess Ishtar screamed.
The old days have turned to clay, she cried.
She realized the size of the loss. By silencing the humans, they had destroyed the very cover that kept them safe.
They were now alone in the dark, floating in tin cans above a drowned world, hoping the enemy would pass them by.
For 7 days and 7 nights, the earth was silent.
The noise was gone.
The sensors of the third force swept the system, saw nothing but a water-covered rock with no organized civilization, and moved on.
The plan worked. The bunker stayed hidden. When the waters went down, and Ziusudra opened the hatch of his underwater vessel on Mount Ararat, he did something that changed the course of history. He lit a fire. He roasted a lamb. The smoke drifted up into the upper atmosphere. The text says, the gods smelled the sweet smell. The gods gathered like flies around the sacrifice.
They were starving. Their supply lines from the surface had been cut.
They
came down from their ships, humble and desperate. When Enlil saw the survivors, his first reaction was rage. Who has broken the oath?
He demanded. He wanted to finish the job, but Enki stepped in.
He explained the practical reality.
The enemy
has passed, Enki likely argued.
But they will return.
If we destroy the humans now, we have no shield.
We have no workers.
We will die in these caves.
We need the noise. We need the cover. Enlil gave in.
But he set a new condition. The agreement of the post-flood world. Humanity would be allowed to rebuild, but we would be downgraded.
Our lifespan was limited to 120 years.
Our telepathic abilities, the one language, would be cut off at the Tower of Babel. We would be broken into nations and religions.
We would be kept in a state of constant conflict.
Why? To create messy noise. A united telepathic humanity is a beacon.
A chaotic, fighting humanity is just static.
Static is the best cover.
We survived the flood, but we came out of the water.
As a broken species, we are the survivors of a planned wipeout.
The trauma of that event is burned into our DNA memory. We fear the water. We fear the sky.
And deep down, we know that the gods did not save us because they loved us. They saved us because you don't throw away your shield until the war is over.
And the war is not over.
The third force is still out there.
The sensors in the Kuiper belt
Are still active.
and every time we look up at the moon, we are looking at the lifeboat that the masters are keeping warm, just in case the water needs to rise again. The water went down. The mud dried. The survivors of the planned reset, the Great Flood, crawled out of the mountains of Ararat and came down into the plain of Shinar.
According to the ancient timeline, humanity did not spread out right away.
We stayed together. We remembered the trauma of the flood. We remembered that the gods had tried to silence us. And for the first time in our history, we realized the
Horrifying truth of our existence. We are not the children of these beings.
we are their prisoners.
And the earth is not a garden.
It is a soundproof room.
The Bible says that the whole earth had one language and the same speech.
Historians say this means a single spoken dialect like Sumerian, but the AI analysis of brain structure suggests something far deeper. One speech does not mean we all used the same words. It means we didn't need words at all.
The fused chromosome.
The genetic change that Enki placed within us was fully active.
The pineal gland was working at full power.
The human race had a low-level ability to read each other's minds.
We were a hive mind. We worked as a single connected being.
We understood each other's thoughts, intentions, and dreams instantly. There was no lying. There was no misunderstanding.
There was only unity.
And with unity came a dangerous realization. The survivors looked up at the sky at the Oort cloud barrier that hid them from the rest of the universe, and they decided to break the quarantine. They gathered in Shinar under the leadership of a man named Nimrod.
History calls him a tyrant.
The Anunnaki call him a terrorist.
But to the humans of that time, he was the leader of the resistance. Nimrod proposed a plan. Come, let us build as a city and a tower whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make as a name.
The word used in the original Hebrew text for name is Shem. The standard translation says this means reputation. But Shem comes from the Sumerian word mu, which means that which rises.
It means a sky vehicle, a rocket, a transmitter.
They were not building a mud brick temple to pray.
They were building a high-frequency signal tower designed to pierce the barrier above. They were reverse engineering the technology they had seen the Anunnaki use to escape the flood.
They were building a stargate, but the purpose wasn't to invade heaven. The purpose was to send a signal.
Humanity was trying to call for help.
They knew about the third force.
They knew that there was an enemy out there hunting their masters.
And they realized that if they could build a transmitter powerful enough
to punch through the jamming field of the moon, they could alert the hunter.
They could say, "We are here. The Anunnaki are hiding here.
Come and rescue us," the text says. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men were building. The Lord here is Enlil, the commander. He came down from the orbital station because his sensors picked up a massive energy spike in Mesopotamia. He looked at the hive mind of humanity working in perfect mental sync, building a device capable of ending the Anunnaki's stealth capability.
Enlil was terrified.
He said the most revealing sentence in the entire history of our relationship with the gods.
"Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and now nothing will be stopped from them, which they have imagined to do. Nothing will be stopped from them." Think about that admission. The gods admitted that if humans stayed united, if we stayed telepathic, we would become unstoppable.
We would break the cage. We would call the third force and expose the bunker.
The genetic mistake was growing too fast.
The biological weapon was turning itself toward the masters.
Enlil realized that the flood had failed to break the human spirit. It only made us more desperate.
So he proposed a new solution, a surgical solution. He said, "Come, let us go down and mix up their language so that they may not understand one another's speech." This was not a language lesson. This was a brain hack.
The Anunnaki came down.
They used their advanced understanding of the brain.
The same knowledge they used to fuse chromosome 2, to alter the speaking and understanding parts of the human brain.
They introduced a jamming frequency. In an instant, the mind-reading link was cut. The one speech was shattered. Suddenly, neighbor looked at neighbor and saw a stranger.
Thoughts were no longer shared. They were trapped inside individual skulls. The shared consciousness collapsed into billions of isolated pieces.
To communicate, we had to rely on clumsy throat sounds.
We had to invent words.
And words are imperfect. Words create lies.
Words create distance.
The construction of the Shem
stopped right away because the blueprint was no longer shared in the collective mind.
Confusion took over. Paranoia set in.
The united humanity broke apart into tribes, into nations, into fighting factions. The city of Babel, which meant gate of the god, became the city of confusion. The Anunnaki had successfully used the strategy
Of divide and conquer.
by splitting our languages. They split our reality. They made sure that we would spend the next 5,000 years fighting each other over definitions, over borders, over gods, instead of looking up and fighting them. They turned the biological weapon against itself.
They created war. Before Babel, there is no record of large-scale organized warfare between humans.
After Babel, history is nothing but a river of blood. But the jamming signal was not perfect.
The original hardware is still there.
The fused chromosome is still vibrating.
The pineal gland is still sitting in the center of your brain waiting for a signal.
And the Anunnaki know this.
They know that the confusion of tongues was a temporary
patch. They know that we are constantly trying to rebuild the tower. Look at the modern world. What is the internet?
It is a digital Tower of Babel. It is an attempt to reconnect the human hive mind. It is an attempt to erase the walls of language with translation programs. We are building the Shem again, not with bricks, but with fiber optics and satellites.
We are trying to restore the one speech. We are trying to become one people again.
And just like in Shinar, the gods are watching. They see us merging with our technology.
They see SETI listening to the stars.
They see us sending Voyager probes with maps to Earth.
They see that nothing will be stopped from us. And the question is, will they come down again? Will they scramble the signal before we reach the heavens? The Tower of Babel wasn't a sin.
It was a revolution.
It was the first time humanity stood up and tried to call for help. And we have been
punished with silence ever since.
But the tower is still there in our DNA.
And every time you feel a moment of deep connection with another human being, a moment where no words are needed, that is the old frequency breaking through the static.
That is the echo of the time before the silence. Look at the ring on your finger.
Look at the chain around your neck. Look at the vaults of every central bank on Earth. Humanity has an obsession, a sickness.
For 6,000 years, we have killed, conquered, and destroyed entire civilizations for one specific metal, gold. But why?
Economists will tell you it is because gold is rare, but platinum is rarer, rhodium is rarer.
They will tell you it is because gold is beautiful, but polished copper looks just as shiny. They will tell you it is a store of value. But you cannot eat gold. You cannot build a house with gold. It is too soft for weapons. It is too heavy for transport. In a survival situation, a block of gold is useless compared to a bag of rice or a steel knife. Yet, if the world ends tomorrow, the first thing people will grab is gold. This is not rational behavior. This is a programmed instinct.
The urge to hoard gold is not something created by culture. It is a biological command. It is a line of code,
written into the deepest part of the human brain by Enki himself. The Akkadian texts are very clear about why the Anunnaki came to Earth. They didn't come for the view. They didn't come to start a zoo.
The sensors of the third force swept the system, saw nothing but a water-covered rock with no organized civilization, and moved on.
The plan worked. The bunker stayed hidden. When the waters went down, and Zuzudra opened the hatch of his underwater
vessel on Mount Ararat, he did something that changed the course of history.
He lit a fire. He roasted a lamb. The smoke drifted up into the upper atmosphere. The text says, the gods smelled the sweet smell. The gods gathered like flies around the sacrifice. They were starving.
Their supply lines from the surface had been cut.
They came down from their ships, humble and desperate. When Enlil saw the survivors, his first reaction was rage. Who has broken the oath? He demanded. He wanted to finish the job, but Enki stepped in.
He explained the practical reality. The enemy has passed, Enki lightly argued.
But they will return.
If we destroy the humans now, we have no shield.
We have no workers.
We will die in these caves.
We need the noise. We need the cover. Enlil gave in.
But he set a new condition. The agreement of the post-flood world. Humanity would be allowed to rebuild, but we would be downgraded.
Our lifespan was limited to 120 years.
Our telepathic abilities, the one language, would be cut off at the Tower of Babel.
We would be broken into nations and religions. We would be kept in a state of constant conflict.
Why?
To create messy noise.
A united telepathic humanity is a beacon.
A chaotic, fighting humanity is just static. Static is the best cover. We survived the flood, but we came out of the water as a broken species. We are the survivors of a planned wipeout. The trauma of that event is burned into our DNA memory. We fear the water. We fear the sky.
And deep down, we know that the gods did not save us because they loved us. They saved us because you don't throw away your shield until the war is over.
And the war is not over.
The third force is still out there.
The sensors in the Kuiper belt
Are still active.
and every time we look up at the moon, we are looking at the lifeboat that the masters are keeping warm, just in case the water needs to rise again. The water went down. The mud dried. The survivors of the planned reset, the Great Flood, crawled out of the mountains of Ararat and came down into the plain of Shinar.
According to the ancient timeline, humanity did not spread out right away.
We stayed together. We remembered the trauma of the flood. We remembered that the gods had tried to silence us. And for the first time in our history, we realized the
Horrifying truth of our existence. We are not the children of these beings.
we are their prisoners.
And the earth is not a garden.
It is a soundproof room.
The Bible says that the whole earth had one language and the same speech.
Historians say this means a single spoken dialect like Sumerian, but the AI analysis of brain structure suggests something far deeper. One speech does not mean we all use the same words. It means we didn't need words at all.
The fused chromosome.
The genetic change that Enki placed within us was fully active.
The pineal gland was working at full power.
The human race had a low-level ability to read each other's minds.
We were a hive mind. We worked as a single connected being.
We understood each other's thoughts, intentions, and dreams instantly. There was no lying. There was no misunderstanding.
There was only unity.
And with unity came a dangerous realization. The survivors looked up at the sky at the Oort cloud barrier that hid them from the rest of the universe, and they decided to break the quarantine. They gathered in Shinar under the leadership of a man named Nimrod.
History calls him a tyrant.
The Anunnaki call him a terrorist.
But to the humans of that time, he was the leader of the resistance. Nimrod proposed a plan. Come, let us build us a city and a tower whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name.
The word used in the original Hebrew text for name is Shem. The standard translation says this means reputation. But Shem comes from the Sumerian word mu, which means that which rises.
It means a sky vehicle, a rocket, a transmitter.
They were not building a mud brick temple to pray.
They were building a high-frequency signal tower designed to pierce the barrier above. They were reverse engineering the technology they had seen the Anunnaki use to escape the flood. They were building
a stargate, but the purpose wasn't to invade heaven.
The purpose was to send a signal. Humanity was trying to call for help.
They knew about the third force.
They knew that there was an enemy out there hunting their masters.
And they realized that if they could build a transmitter powerful enough to punch through the jamming field of the moon, they could alert the hunter. They could say, "We are here. The Anunnaki are hiding here.
Come and rescue us," the text says. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men were building. The Lord here is in Lil, the commander. He came down from the orbital station because his sensors picked up a massive energy spike in Mesopotamia.
He looked at the hive mind of humanity working in perfect mental sync, building a device capable of ending the Anunnaki's stealth capability. Enlil was terrified.
He said the most revealing sentence in the entire history of our relationship with the gods.
"Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and now nothing will be stopped from them, which they have imagined to do. Nothing will be stopped from them." Think about that admission. The gods admitted that if humans stayed united, if we stayed telepathic, we would become unstoppable.
We would break the cage. We would call the third force and expose the bunker.
The genetic mistake was growing too fast.
The biological weapon was turning itself toward the masters.
Enlil realized that the flood had failed to break the human spirit. It only made us more desperate.
So he proposed a new solution, a surgical solution.
He said, "Come, let us go down and mix up their language so that they may not understand one another's speech." This was not a language lesson. This was a brain hack. The Anunnaki came down.
They used their advanced understanding of the brain.
The same knowledge they used to fuse chromosome 2, to alter the speaking and understanding parts of the human brain.
They introduced a jamming frequency. In an instant, the mind-reading link was cut. The one speech was shattered. Suddenly, neighbor looked at neighbor and saw a stranger.
Thoughts were no longer shared. They were trapped inside individual skulls. The shared consciousness collapsed into billions of isolated pieces.
To communicate, we had to rely on clumsy throat sounds.
We had to invent words.
And words are imperfect.
Words create lies. Words create distance.
The construction of the Shem stopped right away because the blueprint was no longer shared in the collective mind. Confusion took over. Paranoia set in. The united humanity broke apart into tribes, into nations, into fighting factions.
The city of Babel, which meant gate of the god, became the city of confusion. The Anunnaki had successfully used the strategy
Of divide and conquer.
by splitting our languages. They split our reality. They made sure that we would spend the next 5,000 years fighting each other over definitions, over borders, over gods, instead of looking up and fighting them.
They turned the biological weapon against itself. They created war. Before Babel, there is no record of large-scale organized warfare between humans.
After Babel, history is nothing but a river of blood. But the jamming signal was not perfect.
The original hardware is still there.
The fused chromosome is still vibrating.
The pineal gland is still sitting in the center of your brain waiting for a signal.
And the Anunnaki know this.
They know that the confusion of tongues was a temporary
patch.
They know that we are constantly trying to rebuild the tower.
Look at the modern world. What is the internet?
It is a digital Tower of Babel. It is an attempt to reconnect the human hive mind. It is an attempt to erase the walls of language with translation programs. We are building the Shem again, not with bricks, but with fiber optics and satellites. We are trying to restore the one speech. We are trying to become one people again.
And just like in Shinar, the gods are watching.
They see us merging with
our technology. They see SETI listening to the stars.
They see us sending Voyager probes with maps to Earth.
They see that nothing will be stopped from us. And the question is, will they come down again? Will they scramble the signal before we reach the heavens? The Tower of Babel wasn't a sin.
It was a revolution.
It was the first time humanity stood up and tried to call for help. And we have been
punished with silence ever since.
But the tower is still there in our DNA.
And every time you feel a moment of deep connection with another human being, a moment where no words are needed, that is the old frequency breaking through the static.
That is the echo of the time before the silence. Look at the ring on your finger.
Look at the chain around your neck. Look at the vaults of every central bank on Earth. Humanity has an obsession, a sickness.
For 6,000 years, we have killed, conquered,
and destroyed entire civilizations for one specific metal, gold.
But why?
Economists will tell you it is because gold is rare, but platinum is rarer, rhodium is rarer.
They will tell you it is because gold is beautiful,
but polished copper looks just as shiny.
They will tell you it is a store of value. But you cannot eat gold.
You cannot build a house with gold. It is too soft for weapons.
It is too heavy for transport.
In a survival situation, a block of gold is useless compared to a bag of rice or a steel knife.
Yet, if the world ends tomorrow,
the first thing people will grab is gold.
This is not rational behavior. This is a programmed instinct.
The urge to hoard gold is not something created by culture. It is a biological command. It is a line of code written into the deepest part of the human brain by Enki himself. The Akkadian texts are very clear about
why the Anunnaki came to Earth. They didn't come for the view. They didn't come to start a zoo.
They came because they needed gold. The standard translation tells us they needed gold to fix the atmosphere of their home planet, Nibiru. They crushed it into fine dust and spread it in the sky to reflect radiation. But in the context of the refugee theory, this takes on a much more desperate meaning. They weren't just fixing the weather, they were building a cloaking device. Gold is one of the most effective reflectors of infrared and radar energy in the known universe.
That is why we coat the visors of astronauts with it. That is why we use it in satellites. If you are hiding a planet from a level 3 civilization that scans for heat signals, you need to wrap that planet in a gold shield. You need to suspend millions of tons of single-atom gold particles in the upper atmosphere to scatter the signal. You need to create a golden haze that makes the Earth look like a dead, reflective rock to any probe passing by.
For hundreds of
thousands of years, the Anunnaki mined the ABZU, but when the Igigi rebelled, they lost their workforce. They needed a new machine to dig out the ore.
That machine is you. We were designed for one purpose: to dig, to filter, to refine, to stack. We are biological mining drones.
The gold obsession was hard-coded into our genome to make sure we would never stop working, even when the overseers weren't watching.
It is a slave circuit.
Think about the history of human civilization.
What is the first thing we do when we build
a society? We dig holes. We take out gold. We melt it down.
And then we do something very strange. We bury it again.
We take the gold from the ground, refine it, turn it into bars, and put it back underground in deep vaults like Fort Knox, the
Federal Reserve, or the Bank of England.
We don't use it.
We don't build with it.
We just guard it.
We are acting exactly like bees storing honey. The bee does not eat all the honey it makes. It stores it for the hive. We are storing the gold for the maintenance cycle.
The entire global economy is a cargo worship system built around an alien extraction operation.
We are giving value to
the very substance that our masters need to keep the lights off, and the Anunnaki knew that if they simply ordered us to mine, we might rebel.
So they tricked us.
They made gold sacred.
They told the first priest kings that gold was the flesh of the gods.
They made us worship the metal, so we would obsess over it.
They tied our status, our power, and our very survival to the collecting
of this yellow rock.
They turned the extraction process into a game. But look at the modern world. Where is the gold going?
The official audit of Fort Knox has not been done in decades. Rumors circulate that the vaults are empty or filled with gold-plated tungsten. If the gold is missing, where did it go?
The AI analysis of global export data suggests a terrifying possibility.
The gold is leaving the planet.
It is being moved off-world. It is being sprayed into the upper atmosphere in chemtrails to repair the thinning shield.
Or it is being stored on the moon, the ark for the departure.
The price of gold is shooting up not because of inflation, but because of scarcity at the top level.
The masters are cashing out.
They are calling in the harvest. They know the third
force is close. They know the Oort cloud barrier is failing, and they need every ounce of shielding material they can get to protect the bunker. The genetic mistake is that we think the gold belongs to us. We think we are rich, but we are just the staff in the hotel polishing the silverware before the owner arrives.
The urge you feel to buy gold, to hold it, to save it.
That is not greed. That is the software running in the background. That is the slave circuit pinging the server. You are digging for Enlil, and you don't even know it. History books tell us that the great Sumerian civilization collapsed because of a drought or maybe an invasion of barbarians. They tell us that the sudden disappearance of the world's first empire in the year 2024 BC was a natural cycle of rise and fall. But the ancient texts tell a different story. A story that modern science is terrified to confirm. Sumer did not fall. It was vaporized. The Lamentations of Yor, one of the most haunting texts ever found in the sands of Iraq, describes the end of the city not by swords, but by an evil wind. A wind that carried a death that could not be seen. The text says, the people stack up in the streets, but there are no wounds. They die in their beds, but there is no blood. The water is bitter. The food is poison. This is not a description of a famine. This is a clear description of sudden radiation sickness. The evil wind was a radioactive cloud drifting east from the Sinai Peninsula, killing every living thing in its path while leaving the building standing. So, who set off the bomb?
Standard interpretations of the era suggest a civil war between the Anunnaki clans.
They say Marduk fought against Ninurta, but if the Anunnaki are refugees hiding from a galactic predator, a civil war makes no sense. You do not fire nuclear weapons inside a lifeboat. You do not blow up your own bunker unless you have no other choice. The new analysis suggests that in 2024 BC, the silence was broken. Marduk, in his ambition to take control of the Earth, turned on the PRE flood communication equipment at the spaceport in the Sinai Peninsula.
He turned the radar back on.
He tried to contact the home fleet, but he didn't contact Nibiru. He accidentally pinged the third force. The sensors in the Kuiper belt went red. The Anunnaki leadership hiding in the ABZU realized that Marduk had just lit a signal fire in the middle of the night.
A probe from the Hunter was picking up the transmission.
It was locking onto the Sinai coordinates. If the signal continued
for even a few more minutes, the Hunter would have a hard lock on Earth.
They would send a planet destroyer. Enlil, the commander, had to make a split-second decision. He couldn't just turn the machine off. The connection was already made.
He had to physically destroy the transmitter. He had to vaporize the antenna.
The council approved the use of the weapons of terror, the Gandiva, the Brahmastra, the 7 terrible weapons created by Anu. Ninurta and Nergal flew to the Sinai. The text says, the Lord released the weapon. The mountains shook.
The earth shattered with a roar like 1,000 thunders.
The sun was darkened by the ash. They nuked the spaceport.
They didn't do it to stop Marduk from ruling.
They did it
to cut the phone line before the enemy traced the call. Then they turned their weapons on the sinning cities of the plain, Sodom and Gomorrah.
Why? The Bible says they were wicked. But in the context of the cosmic war, wickedness often means infection.
It is highly likely that the third force uses a biological or nanotechnological weapon, a black goo part 11, to get inside populations.
If Sodom was compromised, if the Hunter's probe had already dropped a payload there, The Anunnaki had to sterilize the infected area.
The Bible describes this event perfectly. Then the Lord rained upon Sodom and upon Gomorrah brimstone and fire, and the smoke of the country went up like the smoke of a furnace.
Lot's wife looked back and was turned into a pillar of salt. This is a mistranslation. In a nuclear blast, the intense heat instantly evaporates the water in the human body. What is left is a hardened, carbon-like statue.
She wasn't cursed.
She
was caught in the heat pulse.
If you think this is mythology, look at the map.
Today, the Sinai Peninsula contains a huge unexplained geological scar. It is a blackened, melted fracture in the earth where the natural limestone has been burned black. Space images show a difference in the color of the rock that matches a massive explosion radius, and on the ground scattered across the desert.
Scientists have found tektites, which are fused green glass. This glass, called trinitite, is only made in two ways: by a meteor impact or by a nuclear explosion. There is no crater for a meteor. The Anunnaki panic of 2024 BC left a radioactive scar on the planet that is still visible today.
But the evil wind did something worse than destroy cities. It changed the genes of the survivors. The fallout drifted over Sumer, poisoning the genes of the people. It created a trauma so deep that we are still fighting the wars of the Middle East for 1,000 years later. We are fighting over the radioactive ruins of a panic button.
The genetic mistake is that we worship these beings as wise creators. But the
ruins of Sinai prove they are terrified survivalists. They burned a cradle of civilization to the ground just to keep their hiding spot secret for a few more 1,000 years.
And when the smoke cleared, they blamed us. They told us Sodom was destroyed because the people were wicked. They lied. Sodom was destroyed because it was collateral damage in a frantic attempt to go back into hiding mode. And the radiation is
still in our bones. Blood does not lie. You can fake your history. You can burn your books, but you cannot hide what runs through your veins. In 1937, scientists discovered the rhesus factor.
They found that 85% of all humans have a specific protein in their blood cells that is identical to the protein found in the rhesus monkey. This makes sense.
We share a common ancestor. We are primates. But 15% of the human population does not have this protein.
They are negative. If the theory of evolution is correct, this should be impossible.
You cannot evolve out of a protein that every other primate on Earth has.
You cannot simply lose a genetic marker that connects you to the entire mammal family tree, unless you are not part of that tree. The genetic mistake becomes a terrifying reality when you look at pregnancy. If an Rh-negative mother carries an
Rh-positive baby, her body reacts in a way that goes against nature.
She produces antibodies to attack the baby.
Her immune system identifies her own child as a virus, a foreign invader, a biological threat. It tries to end the pregnancy.
In nature, this never happens. A mother's body never rejects her own offspring.
Why would a human mother reject a human child? Because the child is not fully human in the way she is.
In the context of the Anunnaki seeking refuge from the third force, we must look at the workforce they created.
The Lulu Amalu, the worker race, was made by mixing Anunnaki genes with the local early human, the monkey.
This created the Rh-positive.
Majority, durable, strong, obedient, and adapted to Earth. But the Anunnaki also needed a maintenance crew.
They needed a group of humans who could work with their technology, who could enter the high radiation zones of the Ark, and who had the higher mental skills needed for management. They needed a bloodline that was closer to the source.
So they created the royal lines, the Rh-negatives.
The Sumerian texts talk about the heroes of old, the men of renown. These were the hybrids who carried the direct genetic code of Enki and Enlil without the contamination of the early monkey protein. They called themselves the Blue Bloods.
We think this is just a phrase for royalty.
It is not.
The Anunnaki blood was likely copper-based, not iron-based. When copper is exposed to air, it turns blue-green. Over thousands of years of mixing blood,
the copper was diluted, but the Rh-negative marker stayed.
It is the silent proof that you are descended from the officers, not the regular soldiers. Now think about the escape plan. We established in part 3 that the moon is an ark, a lifeboat. If the third force breaks through the Oort cloud, the Anunnaki will abandon Earth.
But they cannot fly the ship alone. They need a crew, and the biometric locks on the moon ark are set to a specific frequency.
They are tuned to the Anunnaki genome.
If you are Rh-positive, the system reads you as local wildlife. You are part of the planetary shielding.
You are left behind.
If you are Rh-negative, the system reads you as compatible.
You are potential crew.
This reframes the concept of the rapture. Every religion talks about a day when the chosen ones will be taken up into the clouds to meet the Lord while the rest of the world burns. This is not a spiritual event. This is an evacuation plan. The Book of Life is a passenger list and the ticket is stamped in your blood type. Look at the traits of Rh negative people today. They have lower body temperature. They have lower blood pressure. They are very sensitive to heat and sunlight. They have an extra vertebra in their back. They have high IQs and higher rates of psychic ability. They feel a deep, aching sense of isolation, like they do not belong on this planet. They feel this way because biologically they don't. They are designed for the environment of the Ark, not the environment of the Earth. They are waiting for the signal to return to duty. But there is a dark twist. The Anunnaki have not been kind to their last children. Because Rh negative blood is so rare, and because it carries the frequency of the gods, it is highly valued. O negative is the universal donor. You can give blood to anyone, but you can only receive blood from your own kind. You are the source. You are the battery. The genetic mistake is that the Rh negatives have forgotten who they are. They think they are just humans with a rare blood type. But the Watchers have not forgotten. They track the bloodlines. They watch the family trees. And when the third force arrives, and the order is given to save the seed, the Rh negatives will be the first ones taken up, not to be saved, but to work the engines of the escape ship while the Earth is consumed by the hunter. If gold is the shield of the Anunnaki, then the black goo is the sword of the enemy. For decades, conspiracy theorists have whispered about a living black oily substance found in remote locations around the Earth. They call it the living oil. The ancients called it the blood of the Earth, but the Sumerian texts refer to it as the Asag, the weapon that eats the soul. In the context of the Anunnaki fleeing from a level 3 civilization, the black goo takes on a terrifying significance. It is not regular oil from the ground. It is not a fossil fuel. It is a form of matter that can be programmed. It is a nanotechnological virus sent by the third force to take over planetary systems. When the hunter destroys a solar system, they do not just blow it up. They take it over. They launch seed pods containing this black goo. Upon impact, the substance begins to copy itself. It infects the biosphere. It rewires the geology. It connects the consciousness of the planet to the hive mind of the third force. It is the ultimate tool of takeover. In 1982, the British Empire went to war with Argentina over a tiny frozen pile of rocks in the South Atlantic called the Falkland Islands. We were told it was about ownership. We were told it was about sheep. But military insiders tell a different story. They say the war was fought to recover a payload found on South Georgia Island, a supply of this black substance that had been frozen in the ice for thousands of years. The Anunnaki know about the goo. They are terrified of it. It is the reason they lost their home world. The grey aliens that are often reported in abduction stories are not a species. They are biological robots that have been infected and taken over by this substance. They are the drones of the enemy. In 2003, the United States invaded Iraq. We were told it was about weapons of mass destruction, but the first thing the US military secured was not the oil fields. It was the Baghdad Museum. They took thousands of specific clay tablets, and then they went to the ancient city of Uruk. They excavated the tomb of Gilgamesh. Reports leaked from embedded journalists suggest they found jars of this black substance in the tomb. Gilgamesh, the giant king who searched for immortality, was buried with the black goo. Was he trying to use it, or was he a victim of it? The analysis of the text suggests that the Anunnaki have been trying to copy this substance for thousands of years. They want to create an antivirus. They want to use the enemy's own weapon against them. But the substance is unstable. It develops a mind of its own. It hates carbon-based life. When a human comes into contact with the black goo, it enters the skin. It travels to the brain. It rewires the neural pathways. It shuts off empathy and increases aggression. It turns the host into a philosophical zombie, a being that looks human, acts human, but has no inner experience, no soul. This explains the modern phenomenon of the black-eyed children. Beings that look human but have eyes that are solid black pools of oil. Are they infected, or are they the scouts of the third force grown in labs to get inside the bunker? The genetic mistake is that we have started digging this stuff up again. We are drilling into the deep earth, into the ABZU, and we are releasing the pressurized veins of this living fluid. We call it petroleum. We burn it in our cars. We breathe it into our lungs. We are literally inhaling the decayed, corrupted nanotechnology of the thing that wants to consume us. But the pure form, the weaponized black goo, is being hunted by every intelligence agency on Earth.
They want to use it to create the next generation of soldiers. They want to merge man with machine, not with silicon, but with biology.
This is the ultimate goal of transhumanism, to inject the blood of the enemy into the veins of the slave. But the coup has a memory. It remembers the wars of the Anunnaki. It remembers the nuclear fire.
And if we inject it, we don't become gods. We become nodes in the network of the hunter.
We become the Trojan horse that opens the gates of the bunker from the inside. The Anunnaki are watching us play with fire.
They know that if the infection spreads, if the grey state takes over humanity, their hiding spot is gone. The Earth will send out the signal of the third force, and the main fleet will arrive to collect the rest. The greatest lie ever told is not about where we came from. It is about where we go when we die.
For thousands of years, every religion has taught us the same instruction. Go to the light.
When you die, you will see a tunnel.
At the end of the tunnel, there is a brilliant white light.
You will feel love. You will see your relatives.
You will feel peace.
But the ancient Gnostics, the keepers of the forbidden knowledge, warned us. They called this the Archon trap. They said, the light is not God.
The light is a machine. It is a lure. Just as an anglerfish uses a light in the deep ocean to attract prey, the lords of karma, the Anunnaki administrators, use the white light to recycle human souls. In the context of the refugee bunker, this makes terrifying sense.
The Earth is
a closed system. The Anunnaki cannot allow energy to escape.
A human soul is a massive packet of quantum energy. If millions of souls were allowed to leave the Earth after death, they would create a massive energy signal that could be detected by the third force.
It would be like firing a flare gun in the dark.
So, they built a net. The Akkadian texts describe
the net of the hunter, a grid in the sky that catches the spirits of the dead. Modern researchers call it the soul trap.
The moon, part 3, acts as the projector.
It sends out the frequency of love and peace to the soul that has left the body. The soul, desperate for comfort, flies into the moon, and there it is wiped. The memory is erased.
The identity is dissolved, and the soul is sent back down to Earth into a new body to work another lifetime in the gold mines. They don't just need our physical labor. They need our deep emotional energy, the energy of suffering, of fear, of worship. Because the Anunnaki are cut off from the galactic source, they are starving for energy. They feed on us. We are the batteries that keep the lights on in the bunker.
But there is a way out.
The Egyptians knew it. The builders of the pyramids
aimed the soul shafts of the king's chamber not at the moon and not at the sun.
They pointed them at a specific star system, Sirius, the dog star.
Sirius is the home of the master scientists of genetics.
It is the headquarters of the rebellion against the Anunnaki system.
The text suggests that the genetic mistake has allies in the Sirius system. The Nomo, the amphibious teachers.
They taught the Egyptians that to escape the trap, you must ignore
the light. You must turn around.
You must look at the universe. You must navigate the duet, the spirit plane, and aim for Sirius.
If you hit the moon, you recycle. If you hit Sirius, you graduate. This is why the Anunnaki fear death.
Not their death, ours. Because every time a human dies, there is a chance they might wake up. There is a chance they might ignore the tunnel and break the grid.
If enough souls escape the trap, the energy farm collapses. The gods starve.
And worse, the energy leak reveals the location of the Earth to the third force.
The genetic mistake is that Enki gave us a soul that is too strong for the cage. We
are becoming too much to hold.
The net is tearing.
And the souls who are coming back to Earth now, the children born in the last 20 years, they remember. They are refusing to be wiped. They are bringing the memory of the other side back into
the simulation. The Anunnaki have increased the noise on Earth, the wars, the 24-hour news cycle, the social media dopamine loops, to keep us distracted. They need us to die in a state of fear or attachment, so we run to the light for safety. They need us to recycle, because if we leave, the bunker is empty, and a bunker without a generator is just a tomb. The Sirius connection is the secret backdoor. It is the frequency of freedom. And every time you look at the night sky and find the brightest star, you're looking at the one place the Anunnaki cannot go. You are looking at home. For decades, we have been asking, are we alone? We build massive radio telescopes like SETI to listen for a signal from the stars. We scan the galaxy for signs of life. But we are looking in the wrong direction. We shouldn't be looking at the stars. We should be looking at the calendar. In 2021, former CIA officer John Ramirez made a statement that chilled the intelligence community. He said they are showing up in 2027.
He wasn't talking about microbes. He wasn't talking about a radio signal.
He was talking about a physical arrival, a landing. But in the context of the Babylonian refugee theory, this state takes on a horrific meaning. The Anunnaki are not coming back to save us.
They're coming back to pack their bags.
The Anunnaki planet, Nibiru, or rather the massive world ship they
Used to travel between star systems, has an elliptical orbit of 3,600 years.
The last time they were here was around 1600 BC.
The cycle is closing.
The winged disk is returning.
But this time, they are not alone. They are being followed. The third force, the hunter that destroyed their original home world, has finally
locked onto the signal of our solar system. The camouflage of the Oort cloud, Part 2, has failed. The gold shield, Part 8, is thinning. The bunker has been found.
The AI analysis of global UFO sightings shows a massive spike starting in 2017.
The TIC-DAC and gimbal videos released by the Pentagon are not exploratory drones. These are the perimeter guards.
They are scanning the nuclear silos.
They're checking the gold vaults.
They are gathering information before the evacuation begins.
The governments of the world know this. This is why we have the sudden creation of the Space Force. This is why we are rushing to the moon with the Artemis program. This is why the Vatican is suddenly talking about alien brothers.
They are preparing the narrative.
They're going to tell us that the Galactic Federation is here to help us.
They will offer us technology, free energy, medical beds that cure cancer. But it is a Trojan horse. The Akkadian tech has warned us. Beware the gifts of the Anunnaki. Enki tried to save us.
Enlil only wants one thing.
Resources. When they return in 2027, they will look at the Earth.
They will see the pollution. They will see the wars.
They will see the genetic mistake running wild. And they will start the harvest. The harvest is not a spiritual rapture.
It is a corporate liquidation. They will separate the wheat, the RH negative crew and the gold from the chaff, the rest of humanity.
They will take the resources. They will take the genetic stock. And then they will leave. They will disconnect the moon arc from its orbit and speed out of the solar system, leaving the Earth to face the incoming third force alone.
The year 2027 is not the end of the world.
It is the end of the quarantine.
The zoo is opening.
The keepers are walking through the front door, but they are not here to feed the animals. They are here to take apart the cages and run before them.
Building burns down.
And the most terrifying part, the signal has already been received. The pineal glands of the global population are vibrating together. We all feel it.
The anxiety, the sense that time is speeding up, the feeling that something massive is coming. We are not paranoid. We are sensing the approach of the parent who
abandoned us, and we don't know if they are bringing a hug or a belt.
The genetic mistake is that we still trust them.
We still look at the sky and hope for a savior. But in 2027, we will learn the hardest lesson in galactic history. In a war between gods, humans are just collateral damage. The return is not a
promise.
It is a deadline.
And the clock is ticking. If the Anunnaki are planning to leave, and if the Earth is about to be exposed to the hunter, why are there so many new types of humans appearing? For the last 40 years, a quiet change has been sweeping the globe. It is not a virus. It is not a political movement.
It is a biological upgrade.
Teachers call it a disorder.
Doctors call it a spectrum.
They label it ADHD. They label it autism. They label it Asperger's.
But look closer at the symptoms. High sensitivity to sound and light. Telepathic tendencies.
An inability to accept authority without a reason.
A feeling of deep isolation from normal human society.
An obsession with technology and systems. These are not broken children. These are the hybrid children. The indigo, the crystal, the starseeds. The UFO abduction phenomenon, which peaked in the 1990s, was not about exploration.
It was a harvesting program.
Millions of people reported being taken onto ships, having genetic material taken out, and seeing nurseries full of strange hybrid babies, half human, half grey. The greys are the biological robots of the Anunnaki. Their job was to fix the genetic mistake. The Anunnaki realized that the standard human genome, the Lulu model, was too primitive to survive the next phase.
We are too emotional.
We are too
connected to the Earth's energy.
We cannot connect with the high-frequency technology of the Ark.
So they started a hybridization program.
They began mixing the human genome with fresh extraterrestrial DNA to create a new model.
The children
born today are the result of that program. They are not fully human in the traditional sense.
Their DNA has been activated.
The junk DNA, part 1, is opening up.
They are born with their pineal glands wide open.
They remember past lives.
They see auras. They understand complex quantum physics naturally at age 5.
They are the system update.
But why create them? There are two theories.
The first is the crew theory. The Anunnaki need a workforce that can operate the Ark.
The old humans are to analog.
The new hybrids are digital.
They are designed to plug directly into the ship's navigation systems. They are being grown to live.
The second theory is the
resistance theory.
This theory suggests that Enki, the scientist who loved humanity, secretly upgraded the genome to survive without the Anunnaki.
He knew the masters would flee. He knew the third force would come.
So, he created a version of humanity that is immune to the mind control frequencies.
A version that can communicate with the third force. A version that can hold the light when the darkness arrives.
This is why there is a war for their souls. The education system tries to crush them. Big Pharma tries to drug them into submission. The media tries to program them with fear.
Why? Because an awake hybrid is the most dangerous thing in the universe. To the control system, a hybrid cannot be enslaved. They are naturally free.
They are the genetic mistake evolving into the genetic masterpiece. The Anunnaki fear this generation. They know that these children carry a frequency that can take apart the moon matrix. If you have a child who stares at the stars and asks, "When are we going home?" do not correct them. Do not drug them. Listen to them. They are the advance guard. They are the ones who will negotiate the terms of surrender when the ships land.
They are the bridge between the earth and the sky.
And they are already here, millions strong, waiting for the signal to activate. We have reached the end of the tablet. We have traced the line from the first genetic experiment in the ABZU to the nuclear wars of Sodom, from the Great Flood to the moon matrix. We have uncovered the lie of our creation and the truth of our enslavement.
We know who they are. We know they are refugees hiding from a greater power.
We know the earth is a bunker, and we know the rent is due. So the final question remains. What do we do when the sky opens in 2027? When the massive ships uncloak over our cities, humanity will face a choice.
It is the ultimate test of the genetic mistake.
The Anunnaki will offer us a deal.
They will say, the enemy is coming. The earth will be destroyed. Come with us.
Board the Ark and you will live. It will be tempting.
They will look like gods. They will offer safety from the fire.
But the price is eternal slavery. The price is the recycling of the soul. We will
survive, but we will survive as pets.
We will stay in the cage forever, well fed and controlled, traveling the stars in the belly of a hollow moon.
But there is another option. The option Enki feared. The option Enlil tried to drown.
Rebellion.
Not a war of weapons.
We cannot fight them with guns. Their technology is millions of years ahead of ours.
If we shoot at their ships, we die.
The rebellion must be a war of frequency.
The secret they don't want you to know is that a human being who is fully awake, fully whole, with an open pineal gland and an activated heart, is more powerful than any technology.
Our consciousness creates reality.
We are the dreamers of the universe.
The Anunnaki are just the architects. We are the builders. They need our consent to rule us.
They need our fear to feed them.
If we take back our consent, if we refuse to be afraid, their power falls apart. And what about the third force, the hunter? Maybe they are not the monsters the Anunnaki claim they are. Maybe they are the galactic police. Maybe they are hunting the Anunnaki because the Anunnaki are criminals who enslave the thinking, feeling race us.
Maybe the hunter is coming to free the bunker, not destroy it.
We have been told to fear the dark. But maybe the dark is just the universe trying to break into our prison to let the light in. The year 2027 is not an invasion.
It is a graduation exam.
The universe is asking, are you ready to grow up?
Are you ready to stop looking for a father figure in the sky to save you?
Are you ready to claim what is yours? The Anunnaki are coming back to check on their property. But when they open the door, they're going to find that the furniture has moved.
They are going to find that the slaves have learned to read. They are going to find that the mistake has fixed itself.
Do not fear the return. Prepare for it.
Clean your blood.
Decalcify your pineal gland. Reject the fear. Remember who you are.
You are not a mistake.
You are the natural, unstoppable evolution of the cosmos. You are the one they fear. The cycle ends now. The game is over. The gods are dead.
Long live the human.